Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full review of the Brooks Hyperion Max. So the Brooks Hyperion Max is a lightweight speed-focused shoe without a plate. It follows on from the Brooks Hyperion Tempo, which had a similar design, but in comparison to that shoe, the Max has a little bit more cushioning and has more of a rocker profile. Despite the Max in the name, it's not massively more cushioned than the Tempo. If you look at Max cushion shoes from other brands, you'd expect to see stack heights 40mm and above, but this is probably in the low 30s, though Brooks hasn't confirmed the exact stack height to me. It's a pretty expensive shoe. It's £160 in the UK, $170 in the US. It's very light. It weighs in at 217 grams or 7.65 ounces in my UK size 9, which is even lighter than the Hyperion Tempo in my size, and it's got an 8mm drop. It's got a very lightweight and thin mesh upper with a little bit of cushioning around the heel there, and a heel counter to provide some extra support at the back, but in general quite a minimal upper. And then the insole is made from Brooks's DNA Flash foam, which is a nitrogen injected supercritical EVA foam. It's very lightweight and poppy, a little bit firmer than some of the other super foams on the market, but a very energetic ride for sure. And then you've got a rubber outsole that covers most of the shoe. Actually, given the weight of the shoe is so low, it's actually quite impressive coverage, I think, of rubber on the bottom there.
So when it came to fit, I ran true to size in the UK 8.5, and that's how I would recommend it. I had really good fit on this. I had good hold in the heel. I had a really nice kind of hugging lockdown fit across the top of the shoe. There's plenty of room in the toe box, or good wiggle room in the toe box, and particularly kind of the uppers kind of sit high above the top of the toes, so no bashing there. Overall, just like a firm, hugging, comfortable fit, nice disappearing feel on the foot from the uppers, and I would definitely recommend going true to size.
So the Brooks Hyperion Max fit me pretty well in my normal size. Like, it's got a decent amount of room in the toe box there, but holds the foot nice and tightly around the midfoot and heel, so it feels quite secure. Like, I'm reasonably small and narrow for my size, and potentially I could have gone half a size down for a tighter, more aggressive fit, but I think for a shoe that I'd primarily use for training runs, I was very happy with it in my normal size with that extra room in the toe box.
So I've done 30 plus miles in the Brooks Hyperion Max. That has been mostly on pavements, paved paths, roads, that kind of thing. I've done a mixture of paces. I have done some off-road compacted kind of riverside paths, but it's mainly been on the harder stuff. Now those runs include a 1.5 hour mixed pace run where I basically did a progression run. It was an out and back. I did kind of progression on the first 5.5 miles out, and then I did another progression on the next kind of 5.5 miles back, testing them at their kind of easy pace and their kind of faster pace up to that sort of, for me, like a marathon pace, which is around the kind of 6:30 per mile pace. I've also done some all-out 5Ks and a few easier, slower runs just to test the versatility as well. Now, there's a lot I like about this shoe. I think it feels compact, agile, and nimble on the foot straight away the moment you put it on. You know, it's instantly comfortable with a good wraparound tongue, nice balanced heel cushioning, and it's kind of doing its best to melt into the background and just let you get on with business. However, I found it a touch firm on my early runs. And I think, although some people have said that this is a shoe where the midsole will soften up the more miles you put into it, I haven't reached that point yet. And to me, even as I get kind of north of 30 miles over a mixture of runs and mixture of durations, it still feels a little bit firm. And on top of it running a little firm, I do think that this lacks a little bit of pop compared to some other daily trainers that we've seen. Though there is perhaps one benefit to that. Arguably, you're going to get more stability in this shoe than the likes of the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. So what you're trading off in that kind of big punch, you're getting back in a really good sort of reliable platform to run off. So I said it in the first run video, and I'll say it again, I had quite a lot of high hopes for the Hyperion Max here. I wanted this to be a really kind of fast, poppy, punchy shoe, but I do think it lacks the propulsion of some of the other sort of daily trainer rivals. And I feel like the rocker is doing quite a lot of the heavy lifting here in terms of the transition and that kind of feeling of speed that you're going to get out of this shoe. You know, there's not an awful lot coming back, I don't think, from that midsole. Now that said, I think the Hyperion Max was most lively when I was moving at faster paces, or at least in my best kind of form. You know, I'm talking about things like, you know, fast turnover with really good locked in, dialed in, good form. Now, I don't tend to mind a firmer shoe that makes you do a little bit more of the work. I actually think that's quite a good thing. I'm not a big fan of sort of too squishy in response, kind of soft, max cushioned sort of daily training shoes. I much prefer kind of to veer towards the firmer end. But I think if you're really looking for a versatile daily trainer, I'm not sure this quite has the range of something like a Hoka Mach 5 or the Saucony Endorphin Speed, particularly when you talk about those kind of easier pace runs, the ones where you might want a little bit more cushion and protection, and also into those kind of longer miles. So if you're talking about big long training runs, we're deep into those where you go sort of north of 2 hours, you're going to want something there to offer you a little bit more back in terms of cushion and protection, and even something that's going to give you a bit more spring to kind of help fight that fatigue. I'm not sure you get that entirely from this Brooks Hyperion Max in the way that I would like, or not as much as I would like. That's not to say I didn't like this shoe. It really grew on me the more I ran in it. And I think for a specific kind of set of use cases, I think it actually does really well. Now, I've got this down very much as kind of a shoe that I would use for my faster, shorter training runs, or even, something, when we've got super shoes with carbon plates, you're probably not going to race a half marathon in this shoe. But it's that kind of distance, maybe even low, really fast 10Ks, where you want something that's going to be light and nimble and agile, and just makes you feel kind of racy with a good kind of fast turnover, a good transition, something that disappears. This shoe has all of that, but I think it's quite restricted in terms of the kind of types of paces that I would run at.
So I was really excited and looking forward to testing the Hyperion Max, and I was hoping basically it'll be a nice, simple, lightweight shoe that you could use for a really big variety of runs. So overall, it has met those expectations. I don't think I've had a single bad run in this shoe, and I certainly find it a very versatile shoe that also excels when you are trying to push the pace. Of the runs I've done, I've certainly enjoyed the shorter stuff, so anything up to 10k, really at any pace. Like, it's not a max cushion shoe despite the name, and it's got a reasonably firm ride, but isn't actually that rockered. I think it doesn't really feel very smooth to me. It's still quite snappy in the transition, but it wasn't uncomfortably harsh or anything like that. I find it a little bit more comfortable certainly than the Brooks Hyperion Tempo, but you are going to find more cushion comfortable shoes out there for your daily training, but I do quite like the feel of this shoe just for easy plods. And then when you do up the pace, it really is light, nimble, and has a nice fast transition. I did a track session in it running a mixture of rep lengths, and I've also done some other faster stuff, and I think where it really works well is for short, sharp periods of fast running, just because it is a nice lightweight shoe. It's very nimble, it's not going to hold you back, you just get on with it. It's got a fast transition, a little bit of punch from the foam, and then I think maybe when it falls short compared to some other shoes is on extended periods of hard running, whether that's long tempo runs, long reps around things like marathon pace. You just don't get as much push from the shoe that you get from either plated shoes or shoes that have maybe slightly bouncier, more dynamic foams. Like, I like the feel of DNA Flash, but it's not like squishy and springy. It's quite firm, responsive. It doesn't like bottom out or anything like that over time, but it doesn't really give you a huge amount back. And certainly if you look at the plated training shoes out there with a similar price to the Hyperion Max, you are going to get a bit more in terms of propulsion on those faster long runs. And then when have gone long in it, over about 10 miles, I'd say it's not the most comfortable shoe in the world. Like, I think it's okay. It's fine for me. And I think there would definitely be people out there who like the feel of this shoe for those long runs. Like, it is still a pretty well cushioned shoe, but it's not very, very plush or accommodating, and it's quite stripped back around the upper. So I think if you're looking for easy runs in particular, there will be more comfortable shoes out there, more cushioned shoes. I don't think this is actually a bad option for them. I do think it's versatile enough to handle those, but yeah, if you're looking for more comfort and a softer ride, you will find it quite easily looking around Brooks range or anywhere else. So yeah, overall I think the story for me is that there's not really any run I'd be unhappy going out to do in the Brooks Hyperion Max. I think it performs well for a really nice range of runs, especially if you do prefer that slightly firmer ride. However, I think it doesn't really stand out in any one way, and I think the high price in particular will make it a hard shoe to recommend for lots of runners. So positioning the Hyperion Max in the market at large, it's a shoe that I'd slot in alongside things like the Hoka Mach 5 and the New Balance Rebel V3, just really fun, lightweight shoes that don't have plates in them but are really good for fast running, and then have quite a lot of versatility as well, that you can use them for other runs. Looking at those shoes, it's got a different feel. This is a firmer ride, a slightly more snappy ride, whereas the New Balance Rebel has a softer foam, a bouncier, more explosive feel, and the Hoka Mach 5 is a little bit more comfortable with a more exaggerated rocker. I think the Hoka Mach 5 is certainly a better option for those who do a lot of long runs in their training, and then comparing this to the Rebel does have a slightly more propulsive, exciting feeling to it, but I do think this foam is a little bit more reliable and consistent and certainly won't bottom out, whereas the Rebel has that extra softness, which some will like, but some will equally prefer the slightly firmer feel of the Hyperion Max. I also think, just looking at those three shoes, just as an aside, I think the Brooks Hyperion Max will be the most long-lasting of the trio. This foam DNA Flash does hold up very well to lots of running. It's got a pretty decent outsole there that show no signs of wear for me, so that is one thing to consider, because it is the most expensive of the trio as well, so something to factor in. And then talking of price, that is, I think, really the big problem for the Hyperion Max. Not only is it the most expensive of those shoes, and I would pick up the Mach 5 or the Rebel V3 ahead of it on price alone, and then I actually kind of prefer the ride feel of those shoes as well, just because they are a little bit more accommodating for longer, easier runs. But actually at this price, you're also bringing into the equation all the excellent plated training shoes on the market: the Asics Magic Speed 2, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, the Puma Deviate Nitro 2. Now, if you're really against using a plated shoe for your training runs, that's fair enough. Then I'd go back to comparing it to the Hoka Mach 5 and the New Balance Rebel V3. But if you're not, if you like using those plated shoes, you have no problems with it, those are more impressive shoes in terms of their performance for fast runs. I think they're equally comfortable. Actually, a couple of them are more comfortable than the Hyperion Max for long, easy runs as well, and they'd be shoes I'd be happier racing in than this shoe as well. So the fact that they come in a bit cheaper in many cases than the Hyperion Max just really makes it hard to recommend this shoe to people who are happy to go out and use plated shoes in their training. So if you do want to avoid plates, then fair enough, this is a really good option, along with the Mach 5 and the New Balance Rebel V3. But if you don't, those are shoes I'd recommend ahead of it. And I do use plated shoes in my training, so it makes it hard for me to think of a place to put this shoe in my rotation. I think it's a really good shoe. It's just a shoe I don't think I'd use a lot, because I'd have softer, more cushioned shoes for ploughing through daily miles, something like the Puma Velocity Nitro 2, even the new On Cloud Surfer I like just for mooching around on easy runs. And then if I did want to up the pace and do an actual fast training session or even a race, I would use a plated training shoe, the Asics Magic Speed 2, the Endorphin Speed 3. So this just, even though it's a shoe I think is pretty good for pretty much any kind of run, it's not one that I'd end up using very much. And I think that might be the case for lots of runners who do use a rotation if they are happy to use plated training shoes. If you're not, this is one of the top options for your fast trainers out there. If you want a slightly softer feel, then the Hoka Mach 5 is more of a rocker, more of a smooth ride, and then the New Balance Rebel V3 has a bouncier ride. But I do think the poppy, firmer ride of this shoe is great for fast running, especially for shorter interval sessions that come in under that 10k mark. Although it is still pretty decent at holding a fast pace for long periods, there are other shoes I'd personally prefer to be in. Overall, pretty happy the Hyperion Max exists. I think it's a nice option to have on the market for lots of runners who will enjoy the firmer feel and the lightweight, poppy ride it provides. It's just not one that I think would personally slip into my rotation that easily. And I think if you're looking for better value and performance, you can find it elsewhere. You've got to really be engaged and enjoy the ride feel of the shoe to have it over those other options, which do come in cheaper and give you a little bit more punch.
My verdict on the Brooks Hyperion Max then, well, I think this is a very capable shoe in some situations. I think it's got a good kind of comfort. It's got a good disappearing feel on the foot. It actually feels quite natural. It sort of blends back into your run. You know, you don't really notice that it's there too much. It's got a happy kind of rolling transition, mainly coming from that rocker, and it's very capable when you're moving at faster paces. But I'm afraid this one sort of falls into the camp of it's a like, not love for me with this shoe. And that mainly comes down to the fact that although it does a good job at faster paces, I don't think it does quite as good a job as some of its kind of plated rivals, and there are better options even, I think, for sort of those fast runs than this shoe. It also doesn't quite offer the cushion protection of some of the other daily trainer rivals, and I think as a result that limits its range at kind of easier paces as well. It runs really well on shorter, faster efforts, but I don't think it's quite bringing the long mile comfort of something like the Speed 3 or the Mach 5, and it doesn't quite fight the kind of longer run fatigue as much as I'd like it to. And for the price, I was just really hoping that this shoe would do a little bit more than it does. You know, at that price, if versatility is key for you, I don't think this shoe necessarily offers it fully or as well as other shoes. But if you're looking for a faster, non-plated training shoe that can do really well when you're doing those kind of faster, shorter runs, then the Brooks Hyperion Max, I think, is an option that's well worth looking at.
That is our review of the Brooks Hyperion Max. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you a big fan of the shoe? Do you train in plated training shoes, or are you trying to avoid them? In which case, what shoe are you going for your faster training runs? Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.